being right doesn't make me rude. No, first of all, well, it's in question whether you're right. But what makes you rude is go back 2 days ago with what the comments you left me, how quickly you forget. It makes me right. Okay, well, okay, we'll see. Historical fact is historical fact. What is historical fact? What Dartmouth teaches you? And then you want to tell me I should go to other places other than foundersarchives.gov? .gov. Like, if you really want to understand the founders, you can either sit in your classroom at Dartmouth and study all that, or you can actually read the letters they wrote. For instance, so people understand. The First Amendment shows us the connection between the Declaration and the Constitution. It protects freedom of conscience. This is what the number one reason that they fled here, especially the 1620 founders, but all of them, was freedom of conscience, freedom of speech, freedom to think for oneself. So of course there's a reason that number one is number one. But let me go on here. It protects freedom of conscience, which the founders considered first among the unalienable rights enshrined in the preamble to the Declaration, and first among the blessings of liberty enshrined in the preamble to the Constitution. How do we know that the rights of conscience, as the founders called them, were first among the unalienable rights and the blessings of liberty recognized by the Declaration and the Constitution? We know that from two sacred texts. Thomas Jefferson's bill for establishing religious freedom in Virginia, drafted in 1777, and Justice Brandis's opinion in Whitney versus California, drafted in 1927. Jefferson drafted his bill in Virginia months after he returned from Philadelphia, where he had just completed the Declaration of Independence. He considered his religious freedom bill among the three accomplishments of his life, important enough to be inscribed on his tombstone, along with his having drafted the Declaration and founded the University of Virginia. Under Virginia's colony religious code, all dissenters were required to support and attend the established Anglican Church. Presbyterians and Baptists could be arrested for practicing their faith or preaching the gospel. Quakers, Jews, and other dissenters could be denied the freedom to marry or have custody of their children. Jefferson proposed not only to de-establish the Anglican Church and remove all criminal punishments for dissent, but also to prohibit all compelled support for religion of any kind. He concluded that because freedom of conscience is a fundamental right, government can regulate overt act against peace and good order, but it lacks all power to intrude into the field of opinion. Jefferson's bill set out 4 reasons why government can make no law that constrains our freedom of speech, conscience, or opinion. Those 4 reasons were summed up by Justice Brandis in Whitney, and they have been further developed by the Supreme Court since then. 1, freedom of conscience is an unalienable right because people can only think for themselves. 2, free speech makes representatives accountable to we the people. 3, free speech is necessary for the discovery of truth and the rejection of falsehood. 4, free speech allows the public discussion necessary for a democratic self-government. Quote, well aware that the opinions and beliefs of men, this is Jefferson, depend not on their own will, but follow involuntarily the evidence proposed to their minds. Jefferson wrote in the first sentence of his draft, God hath created the mind free and manifested his supreme will that free it shall remain by making it altogether insusceptible of restraint. In other words, Jefferson argued freedom of conscience is by definition an inalienable right, one that can't be alienated or surrendered to government because our opinions are the involuntary result of the evidence contemplated by our reasoning minds. We can't give presidents, priests, teachers, or fellow citizens the power to think for us, even if we wanted to, because we are endowed as human beings with the capacity to reason and therefore can't help thinking for ourselves. We know that Madison, the drafter of the First Amendment, shared Jefferson's views because he echoed them in his memorial and remonstrance in 1785, which persuaded the Virginia legislation to pass Jefferson's bill. The rights of conscience are unalienable. Unalienable. That's the reason it's first. Madison wrote, because the opinion of men, depending only on the evidence contemplated by their own minds, cannot follow the dictates of other men. In his Religious Freedom Bill, Jefferson emphasized that it's crucial in a democracy for citizens to be able to criticize public officials because legislators and religious leaders, being themselves flawed and uninspired, will always try to impose their own opinions and modes of thinking on others. His prediction came to a head in the controversy of the Alien and Seditions Act of 1798, where the Federalist Congress made it a crime to criticize the Federalist president, John Adams, but not the Republican vice president, Thomas Jefferson. And Madison once again echoed Jefferson's views in his Virginia resolution, which said, the Sedition Act ought to produce universal alarm because it is leveled against that right of freely examining public characters and measures, which is the only effectual guardian of every other right. Jefferson himself said it. So, that's all I have to say.